Welcome everyone. Today we have another Welcome everyone. Today we have a new episode from World Talent Economy Forums. We have Dr. Sarita, Dr. Shirley, and Dr. Brett today. Hello everyone. I want to start with Dr. Sarita. Can you hear me today?
Hello, Mr. Sharif. It's such a pleasure to be on your show every time. So thank you so much for having me over once again. I'm indeed honored. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I want to ask Dr. Shirley, how are you today? And can you please introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Mr. Sharif, for having me here alongside of these esteemed panelists. My name is Shirley Zinn. I am coming to you live from Cape Town, South Africa. It's wonderful for me to be part of this global discussion here today. I have spent many years in academia. I'm a professor in human resource management at the University of Cape Town. I'm also serving as an independent non-executive director on a number of boards, ranging from listed boards to private boards to NGOs and higher education. I've also served as an executive in HR in a number of large organizations across South Africa and held a few global roles as well. And I've written a book called Swimming Upstream, which I will talk about, really my personal and professional journey, which I'd love to share bits and pieces of share a bit of that with you today. So I'm looking forward to the discussion, and thank you so much for having me here today.
Thank you, Dr. Shirley. I want to introduce Professor Brett. Can you please introduce yourself and what you are doing? And
Hi, yes. My name is Brad Aaron Modlin. I'm a writer. I write poetry, fiction, and nonfiction. I wrote a book of poems called Everyone at This Party Has Two Names, and a short collection of short stories called Surviving in Drought. I'm a creative writing professor at University of Nebraska at Kearney, where I teach poetry to undergraduate and graduate students. So I'm really lucky that I get to spend my own time writing and then sharing what I'm learning about writing with students, and then those students are learning things about writing and teaching me about it as well. So words are in the air for me all the time. I'm very lucky.
Thank you, Professor. My question, like something like that, like at present situation, we have a lot of technological advancement and we do more engage with different kind of innovations and other things. But in that situation, actually, how literatures play roles for our developments and how we can engage with literatures and how it's help us to learn from the literatures and how the society get involved with this literature. Dr. Sarita, can you please explain this way, and can you please introduce your book? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Sharif. I think, yes, the world is getting competitive with every passing day. I think we are instilling more competition in our children. Everyone wants to do that, do this and do that. And we are all like, running towards something which we ourselves may not understand. So I think literature is the only thing which can keep us grounded, which can keep us sane in this world of competition. That's what I feel. And I have personally observed that people who read books are any day more empathetic. They are more understanding. They are more in touch with themselves than people who do not read. So I would any day want everyone to read, children to read. I think we should encourage them to read. Now, when we look at our own cultures, I think every culture, even in the West, we have the culture of reading bedtime stories to children. So why do we tell them stories? It's so important for them to hear those words, to soothe the frayed nerves with words, that connection that we make when we are speaking to each other. And books do the same for us, I believe. When you are reading a book, it is unlike watching television or playing a game on your screen. So when we read a book, I think it's like a two-way process. The book speaks to you all the time, and it engages you in a way that technology cannot. uh, of course, technology is very important for us, but then I would always want my children, or any children, or anyone for that matter, to read first, to be in touch with books, with the paper, with words, so that we have that connection. We do not lose that connection with ourselves. When you read a book, it stimulates your intellect. It's not a process where you are just watching the words in front of your eyes. It's not like that. It's a two-way process where the book is speaking to you and you are internalizing the words that you read on paper. So it's extremely important, especially in these technology-driven world, I think we should encourage more and more reading. Literature should happen everywhere. Books should be written. Books should be read, and yes, I'll let other panelists speak more on this. Quickly about my books. I am 9 books old this year. Somewhere God has been blessing me, and I'm happy that all the books are well received by readers and critics alike. I have been getting warm reviews from everyone. I have written a book on short stories, poems. I have edited some books, translated from Indian languages to English. So it's a variety of genre that I write in. And I'm writing a book of fiction at this moment. And my book on poems is ready for publication. Yes.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We have a very good audience response. I just want to take some of their response. Shumanta Sharma watching. Brenda, greetings all. Excited to be here listening to those great minds. Humaira Tanzila, hello everyone. Nice to see you all. Hope it's a great discussions and audience can learn many things. Thank you. So Professor Shirley, you are involved with human resource development and many business and corporations and many things. My question is that, like example, I want to know more about South Africa. I want to know more about like the cultures and how actually research and other things work in South Africa, and how you want to see South Africa in the present situation. What's the futures and other things?
Thank you very much, Mr. Sharif. So, South Africa is rich with lots of amazing histories and stories of our colonialist past, stories of who we are and what the journey has been. Our latest stories are, post-colonial stories and around Nelson Mandela, poetry that has been written, music that has been written. I'm sure all of you have listened to the song Jerusalema at least once. I would hope that you have. If you haven't, you need to go right off the show the minute it's done and go and just type in Jerusalema and listen to the pulse of that music. It really, really connects with one's soul. And so for me, growing up in this environment, with the rich history that we've had, with the complexities that we face here, ranging from political to economic to social challenges, and right now, a mixture of COVID and economic devastation that is impacting this country, that has statistics that are always seeming to be off the wall. I mean, when you look at just about everything from racism to gender, issues to economic issues and inequalities. There's so much work to be done, but what has sustained us is the ability to write poems, to write music, to do beautiful art that portrays the way people are feeling at particular points in time, and to write stories about our feelings and how we have overcome huge adversity in our lives and how we continue to learn. My passion, Dr. Shri, is about human development. And I started off as an English teacher. And that was only because I could get a government bursary. That was the only way I could actually get to university. My chances in life, coming from the socioeconomic challenges that I was coming from, there was not even a chance for me to get through high school. That was the level of despair that many of us are living in right now. There are children that get on a grade 1, which is the entry level, and they never ever get through to grade 12, which is the matriculation or final year of high school. My vision was just to pass matric, and that is what I told my family. And so that has been a very difficult journey for me. If it wasn't for my parents sharing with me through their words, their hopes for us, for my sister and I, and we just happened to be two girls growing up in this very difficult space. Those words that my parents shared with me from a very early age, the words of make something of yourself, the impossible is possible. Continue to learn. You have amazing talent. Let's unlock and unleash that talent. And those words have resonated with me my entire life, and that is why this topic today, words have power, is so important. And that is why I want to encourage people to read as much as possible. You don't have to do a whole bazillion degrees, maybe, like all of us have done here, because I then went on to do, and I did a first degree, and that allowed me to teach, and I majored in English, Latin, and sociology. Never ever thought I would even ever get there. But again, if it wasn't for two teachers in my year that said to me, you're not the brightest pea in the pod here. You're not, smashing out the academic lights. But here's the message. You have the potential to do so much more. And to each one of us today, that is the message. Because whatever it is you're doing, you have amazing talent. And that is what's wonderful to be on this show with you today, to say what a wonderful opportunity to say to people that we have amazing talent locked up in ourselves, often half of which we never fully unleash in our lifetime. And through words, we can change hearts, we can change minds, and we can look at doing things differently. We can think more clearly, and we can see that we have choices in life, even when the choices are not apparent to us. And so I will talk a little bit more about that. But this was also the inspiration to write my book, because although I've really had an amazing journey just from a professional development point of view. I went on studying, so I did an honors, I did a master's degree here in Cape Town, and then I got a scholarship to go to Harvard. I did a second master's at Harvard, and I had the most amazing professors there that kept telling me, you can do more, and said to me, you must do the doctorate. I never ever imagined that anything like that in my lifetime would have been possible. And so in many ways, my words are the impossible, although it might seem impossible, actually is possible. And all you need to do is be surrounded by people who can uplift and inspire you. So hopefully today, through this discussion and through sharing a little bit about my book and through our words and our stories that we continue to tell, we are able to open up the possibilities of what is within us, so we can make a difference to this world.
Thank you. It's a really, really inspirational thought for us. We have more audience response. I think everybody watching you, and they're very happy for joining in World Talent Economy forums. Sobha Sharma, she said, please listen to you all. Shumanta Sharma, great to see Professor Bread. Anika Sham, she has a questions. Hi to all. Books are very good friend. Do you agree this statement? So what actually Professor Bread want to share about the book, how a book can be a good friend and how it works. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, my first thought about that question is just thinking back to myself as a child, who I was kind of an extroverted kid who really liked people, but was also a little bit shy and self-conscious. And so I really wanted to interact with many people, but maybe didn't. And so I would go home after school and read. And books were my close friends then. And I think that's the case for many of us, because of maybe part of what Dr. Sarita said about how books are this opportunity for empathy, how reading puts us in the shoes of someone else. It puts us in the shoes of another character. It even can put us in the shoes of other readers when we know that other people are reading this and experiencing it with us in ways that are different from things that we experience on the screen, because our own minds are creating the pictures, and we know that maybe the picture we're creating is exactly what the author had in mind, and we're so closely empathizing with them, but maybe it's not exactly. Often when I'm reading a novel, without realizing that the novel is set in my childhood home, the house that the characters live in is my own small kitchen where I was a child. So it's bringing me something new, but it's also, I'm kind of putting myself into the story. In that way, it's a friend who's new but also familiar, maybe. And then I think one of the great experiences for any of us who like to write, if that's something we take very seriously or something we kind of enjoy from time to time, when we're writing, we're also putting ourselves in the shoes of our readers, right? We're thinking about, how will someone experience what I'm creating? Will they understand what I'm saying? Am I creating the home in which the characters live? Am I creating it well enough that people can visualize kind of what I have in mind? And so reading and writing are both this act of empathy and connection and considering things from somebody else's perspective. And that's what we do with people we call friends as well, with humans, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Dr. Sharitas, I want to take more audience questions, because actually audience are more, and they have very interesting questions. So Dr. Shobha, she asked you questions that it is said that literature holds a mirror to the society. What your take on the professor, like I think Dr. Sharita can give this answer, that what do you think, how like literature can be the mirror for our society, and especially if you want to come up with your cultures from India and Indian culture, Indian society, and we know that you have billions of people in your society, so, and you have different culture. India has variety of cultural people, different language. What do you want to share with us?
Yes, of course. Literature has always held a mirror to society, because we write what we see, what we feel. So I think in that way, literature and society go hand in hand. Uh, Great literature has come out from terrible times like the plague or the world wars that have been fought. So literature is yes, a byproduct of whatever is happening in society at a particular time. So that way they have a very close connection. Yes, when I speak of India, I may not be doing justice to the whole of India, because India is a big cauldron of so many different cultures and traditions. And when I say Indian culture, I don't know which culture to speak of. You have the North culture, which is the main Hindi-speaking belt. You have the Ohomia culture from Northeast. Then you have the Bengali culture, Gujarati, Marathi. So there are so many of them. So I may not be doing justice to everyone by using a blanket term like Indian culture. But one thing which is in common is that yes, in India or in the South Asian countries, I think we have always focused more on familial ties. We have always given more importance to the family, to the society, and individualism has always been uh, 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 a second. It comes second after family. So I think that is what I see in common. And I think that is what is reflected in the great literature of that has come out of India. Like if you talk of Munshi Premchand, or if you talk of Mamuni Raisam Goswami, or even filmmakers like Satyajit Ray and all. I think one thing which I find common in them is that they all vouch for familial ties and societal responsibilities. Unlike in the Western world, I think in India, more focus is given to familial ties and social responsibilities. So I think that's what I would like to say for now regarding what Indian literature mainly focuses on. If I may use the term Indian, I mean, with due apology. Yes.
Mhm. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Very interesting. Professor Shirley, my questions to you, like, let's say I have many youth peoples, even World Talent Economy Forums, many youth people actually engage with them. And there are many activities we are doing with the youth community. And always they have a dream. They want to go to Ivy League university. They want to go to Harvard or MIT, Stanford. Even Malaysia has a very good, strong like collaborations with MIT and Stanford. So my question is that can you share your experience, that what you learned from Harvard? Like maybe many of our youth community can get some sort of inspirations, and they think that okay, they are learning something from a Harvard graduate. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sharif, for that question. As I said earlier, I didn't even imagine that I would end up going to Harvard and have the opportunity to study there, um, and so it was very daunting for me. But let me just tell you the story within the story about how I got there. I had just finished my first master's, and at the University of the Western Cape, where I was working as a lecturer at the time in teacher education, and so I met my husband Kevin in that same year at the university, and his mother clips out little newspaper clippings for me because she thinks I'm very busy and I might miss something. So she clips out, and this is the power again of of words, of newspapers, of stories that people project and messages that people put out, and it opens up possibilities to us. And so she gave me this clip and she said to me, you need to apply for this. And it essentially read Harvard South Africa Fellowship now open for application. And they send, if you Googled it now, they send 5 students every year, mid-career, to Harvard. There are a couple of programs you have to apply for and get through all the hoops, but essentially they provide the financial capability for those who are so disadvantaged that might never be able to go. But the opportunity. And so, of course, I went for a very intimidating interview, and I was just blown over because she actually believed in me before I believed in myself, in terms of saying to me, "You can do this." I said, "Do you understand what Harvard is and where it is?" And I just don't think I can even begin to fathom that. But and she said to me, "You apply. If you don't do it, you'll never know." So off I went and applied, and I managed to get in along with the 4 others that year. And then I went off to study. And remember, in our society here, we come from a very fragmented society. Lines drawn across racial and gender and every possible, so many boundaries, so many barriers. Even the education system was designed in particular ways to silence you, to not give you a voice, especially if you're black. And if you're a woman, you weren't meant to have anything in terms of academic qualifications. You were actually not meant to succeed at all. So for me, this was a huge, shift across that divide. And then being at Harvard and thinking about, am I going to make it here? This is one of the best, places to study in the world in terms of everything that I see around me. But I was going to use this opportunity to study and come back to South Africa with qualifications that was going to help me to make a contribution to South Africa. So the intention was never to stay there; it was always to come back with something. And I did my doctoral thesis in anti-racist education. It taught me to reflect on values of justice, of social justice, of honor, of dignity, of resilience. And it's, the point that Dr. Sarita and Professor Brad makes about fiction fosters empathy. These are the kinds of leaders we need today. We need empathetic leaders. We need leaders who care about people. We need leaders who are humanizing their organizations and really caring about the environment. And I think that this was an opportunity at Harvard to really drive me to think critically, to reflect, to introspect. And the environment enabled me to actually explore things that I might not have done, to have conversations I might not have had, and to open me up to new possibilities, because one can get very claustrophobic and locked into your own ideas about life, and suddenly you had the whole world there because they have an international community. And this is what the beauty and the magic of conversations across the world like this is, Mr. Sharif, is when you can engage with Dr. Sarita and Prof. Brad, and you can you can get so much depth and understanding of what's happening in the world. And so for me, I was striving to come back here and fulfill a dream of an equal society, justice for all, nurturing a community, a society that needed healing from all of the damage. And I believe that writing the doctoral thesis, writing the book, reading the literature, sitting at the feet of some serious academics and gurus and experts in this field, and listening to students' stories from around the world crystallized my ability to say, what is my purpose? And what from this privilege comes a lot of responsibility as well. I need to go back and really make a difference, and remind people about our common humanity, and rebuild and heal the pain that people have been through. And so this is what I managed to do there. It was not just the academic experience. I think it was much deeper than that for me. But this is where I was in my life, and pretty much where I am still in terms of becoming and renewing my energy around this. And so I also realize as a teacher and a writer, and that is why I still try to teach, even though it's more on a part-time visiting basis right now, that our words are incredibly powerful. Literature and books are so pivotal in our society. And I'm encouraging everyone everywhere, especially in South Africa, to continue to learn, from reading, from engaging, from dialoguing, because this is the way we're going to transform our society and transform ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor Braid, actually, I think that there are a lot of questions from audience for you. So I have also questions to you. Let's say like cultural diversification is a very important for literature, for these things, and especially when we observe the social media. Recently, I saw that you attend different kind of talk and discussion with Dr. Sharita and different sessions. My question is that how you want to explain that these cultural diversifications can help people to enrich the literatures as well as enrich the society. Even we want to enrich our knowledge and everything, how it works. What your inner thought about that, how you make differentiations with the collaboration of different culture.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I hope we're not just sort of repeating ourselves again and again, but I think so much of what we're talking about with literature is that desire for empathy, right? And so the more that we move through the world, we just recognize how both similar and different so many different folks can be. And so I think that trying to learn from various cultures, I think that something that we just so much need in the world now is the empathy and recognition of various stories. And so literature is a way to convey those stories and to learn those stories, to hear from people who we might not otherwise hear from, be that fiction or nonfiction, be that poetry. Literature is an opportunity to learn from other people. It's certainly something. There are many important social movements and changes happening in the United States at these moments, and our literature is corresponding with that. Some of the conversations happening about racial justice in the U.S. for example, one of the books that just won the Pulitzer Prize was Jericho Brown's The Tradition. It's a book that won this summer, or in the spring rather, won this amazing award. It's a wonderful book that speaks about the need for racial justice, and this summer, as movements have reflected that need, it became very clear to me that I had a different book in mind. I was teaching several books, for my graduate class this semester. I had several books in mind, but I needed to switch one of them out because I thought this is a book that's so timely and so important to these conversations, and it's expressing things that people are thinking, saying, and wanting to learn more about. And it's expressing them through poetry, which is this unique, powerful, condensed way of expressing all of these things and kind of putting folks in a listening mode. Poetry, I think, literature, and perhaps particularly poetry, forces us to listen because it involves so much silence. So, the poetic line, we have words, 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 and then we have the white space. Words, 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 and then the white space. A poem is constantly forcing us to stop, even just for a half second, and listen. And so it's teaching us to pay attention to what's being said and to let what's being said echo into our own ears. So for me, like, the conversations about different lives that were happening needed to be reflected in the literature that I was teaching, and the students and I needed to have that opportunity of listening, in those white space breaks. So yeah, I think that literature and the recognition of the hearing of different stories go hand in hand inherently.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dr. Sharita. Like, you are a writer and you have a lot of books and a lot of engagement with the social works and NGOs and other things. But there is a very important questions and very interesting questions from Sohail Rana. He asks you, books change the human thoughts, but what could be the reason why today's youth are not reading books so much? So any things, because any, like, you want to share with us even?
Yes, as much as I would like to, I mean, I think people read very less books. Uh, it's the other day I was reading a news item where people, uh, so many people do not read any books once they have graduated from university. So it's such a pity that people do not read. It must have something to do with technology, which has made our lives very easy. And it's more, I think, reading demands a kind of attention from you, which many people may not be willing to give in. They may not have that kind of patience to sit and read. As Professor Modlin was saying, that the words echo in our ears, they force us to think. So when you're reading a book, you are actively participating in the process of creating something. The author has already created the book, but the reader also creates something. He or she creates a thought in her own mind while reading the book. So only a very creatively inclined person would want to read a book, I think. We need to bring that culture back. I think in every homes we need to have people reading books. It has to start with parents. Parents have to teach the children by practice. With a mobile phone in your hand, surfing it all the time and telling your children to read will not work. I think you have to show them that the pleasure of reading. I think in the initial stages when they are young, you have to read to them storybooks, talk to them. Because I personally feel that when I talk to my students, or when I talk to my children, or when I read to them, I feel that their anxiety levels, their stress levels have suddenly dropped down. Uh, and uh, uh, and it makes them less stressful. It makes them sit in one place and listen to me with attention. So I think it has to start somewhere with we taking a conscious decision of bringing in more books into the house, ourselves reading the books, so that children learn from us. We have to take the culture back some 30 years down the line. When I was a kid, the only time pass that we had was reading books. And we could not buy a lot of books, so my father used to borrow books from the library. And we were five siblings. We used to have time slots. You read this book within a week, you have to finish this, and then it's my turn. So turn wise, we would read the books, and we ended up reading 5 7 books in maybe 15 days. So I think we have to take our children back to that era when technology was not so dominant in our lives, and when books were our closest friends. So yes, let's try and do that. It would
Mhm.
help.
Mhm. Thank you, Dr. Sharita. Professor Shirley, you have a lot of engagement of human resource developments, and you have a different story of development. My question is that beside these things like these literatures and this kind of research, what is your advice for this youth community? Because let's say in Asia Pacific there are many youth, I think more than 50% actually youth. I think India also same, in Asia Pacific also same. So this for this youth community, what is your advice, what's your guidelines, and what should they do for their development in terms of human resource development perspective?
Thank you very much, Sharif. That is a very, very important question, because I think in South Africa we have some devastating statistics around our youth, and youth unemployment, and access to quality education, and people and youth actually finishing off their education and then still not being able to find jobs. And a lot of people, a lot of youth become very vulnerable and very resentful of the fact that they might have had a first degree. We have a situation in South Africa called unemployed graduates. That's a whole group of people with maybe a degree or two, and they believe that they've read, that they've applied themselves, and that there's just no way for for them to find employment. Some of them become entrepreneurs. They figure that out eventually. Most of them have become very demoralized and have given up. And so we have a large component, I think about 60 to 70% of our youth, that is between the ages of, and I'm generalizing here now, but I'd say between the ages of 18 and 30 or so. More than half of them are currently unemployed, and I think with COVID, it's going to become even more of a challenge here to us. So there are focused efforts now to make sure that from a social justice and social impact point of view, that we are giving internships, that we are giving learnerships, that we're creating graduate programs that will enable young people to at least through the entry levels into organizations, into entrepreneurial ventures where they can actually begin to earn and become economically active. And so I think that we need to be smarter about how we are drawing the dots between the social outcomes for our youth, our economy, and our education, and also the legacy of our past, because I think we're never going to be able to shake that off. And apartheid has devastated many, many lives, and this is still part of the tale of that is unfolding here. And my explicit advice to young people is to continue to learn, continue to read, continue to listen to what's happening out there. And in order to stay on top of your game, you've got to be having a position, you've got to be able to engage, you must get yourself into a space where you are continuously learning and not beginning to despair to the point where you don't bother to read, and the stuff that we are reading is stuff on that's not going to help us to transform and be cathartic, and the whole point that of writing my book, it was difficult for me to write because it was very deeply personal as well. My professional journey has been, I've just had doors open. I've had wonderful opportunities come. I've been surrounded by amazing professors and leaders who have seen the potential. And if every young person in this country and in the world can be, if words can be exchanged with people, whether it be verbal or written, that enables them to see the light of a possibility for themselves, and where they can remain actively hopeful in a place that doesn't offer too much hope sometimes. we need to be able to support and enable that. And the reason why I wrote this book was because I come from a world where there was very little hope. And this was cathartic for me because it really brought healing. There were times when I was going to turn around on this book. It was very much easier for me to write academic papers because, or write a forward in a book, because you don't have to commit yourself so much that you don't have to be vulnerable in these, in these kinds of writings. But here, I was, having to explain my personal journey and how it is intertwined with my professional journey. And so, and having to deal with the emotions that came with that, having to deal with loss and fear and renewal and restoration, and finding peace despite the tragedies. So for those of you who haven't read my book, it's called Swimming Upstream, and it's one of the key devastations in my life really was, or maybe one of the key joys, let me start there, was giving birth to our only child in the middle of my doctorate at Harvard. So I started my doctorate at Harvard in 93. I graduated in 97. I worked 3 jobs as a graduate assistant. I was never going to cut it financially if they didn't help me. And if I didn't perform, I would have been out. And in the middle of all of that, Mr. Sharif, I had this wonderful child that we brought home with us back to South Africa. And it is just such a tremendous source of joy for us. And then, of course, the tragedy struck when he was 7 years old. We were driving back from our Christmas holiday. We were just literally 10 minutes away from where we spent the Christmas holiday with family. And somebody bumped us from behind, and we lost Jamie in that car accident. He was 7 years old. He'd be 25 today. And I took it upon myself to write the story to tell people out there that we have amazing resilience to overcome huge adversity. And this book allowed me to appreciate my vulnerability, my sense of humanity, my sense of mortality. It was difficult, it was daunting and painful, but it was cathartic, and it allowed me to find the relief through the words that I was trying to put out there to others. I was also a little bit, I did a little bit of a different thing. I put my email and my phone number in that book. So wherever you are in the world, you can actually read it. My publisher wasn't too keen for me to do this, but I have to tell you, I've received thousands of messages from all over the world, especially from young people, because I've chosen to write it in just simple, plain English, subject, verb, object, and a few adjectives here and there, and short paragraphs, and to make it clear, but to get the story out that said, life happens to us, and we all have stories. We're gonna all hit complexities and challenges in our lives, but the feedback that I've been getting from people, and this is the beauty of this kind of interaction of reading, of listening, of giving, of receiving, of restoration and of hope, of relief. It's all combined in what is possible through literature. And I'm so truly grateful that I was able to do that. It was a big risk to do. I do get a couple of odd things coming in now and again, but 99% of it is thank you for sharing this. And what this has done for me is it's made me, continue to learn, continue to write. It made me step up. It made me do something that I was deferring, and to have the courage to actually, find my way through my difficulties and move forward. And I believe that there's lots and lots of healing. I think there's even science around, that the benefits that human beings get from reading, it's not just for pleasure. There are many, many more benefits to be had in terms of the enrichment and in terms of what is possible when we've actually connected with an author and some of the expression that they are trying to give. So for our youth today, we're trying very, very hard to get people to read. I read prolifically because I have to read board packs this size. Luckily, they're coming in, through big PDFs and so on now. But I have to continue to learn. This world is so fast-paced. And if you want to, be in the job market, if you want to open yourself up for opportunities, You need to have stayed on top of your game. And again, this doesn't need to be degrees. It can be learning informally through reading and engaging on various topics. And yes, I do agree that our realities are reflected in the books that emerge during the times, that we live in. And this is one of the ways that we can stay on top of our game. So am constantly a proponent for continuous learning, through reading and through reflection on what you have read, and then through turning it into what does this actually mean for me, and how do I make meaning and purpose in my life and the life of others, through what I've engaged with.
Mhm. Thank you. Professor Brett, like now technology has very good roles for our developments and other things, as well as literature, cultural diversifications. This is also important in present society. So I want to take Brenda question. She asked you a question: what is the best way of getting kids interest in literature in the world where tech has taken over? So, what's your thoughts and views on that particular point?
I think Dr. Sarita maybe has more to say on that, or has said so much so well about that. But I think starting early is definitely, I again, thinking about myself as a kid, my parents read to me every night before bed, and sometimes it was the same stories again and again. For me, it was Dr. Seuss's The Cat in the Hat, and I wanted to hear it again and again and again. And to be honest, part of why I love the story so much was because of the screen, actually. So there was sort of this interaction with technology. There was a 30-minute cartoon of it that I watched every single day, and then I wanted to hear the book. And so I suppose, while on the one hand technology is a little bit in opposition to that quiet stillness that reading can create, it also can support it, in that it gives us, it entices us to particular stories. Maybe I think that one of the I used to always share with my students an interview with Mark Bauerlein, in which he talked about young people today resisting reading because it felt like a really solitary activity, and because technology makes them feel so connected all the time, through social media, that what they have for lunch is something that they can share with the world and get everyone's opinions on. And so to be quiet, reading a book is not a very interesting picture to put on your social media. It's not something that maybe creates that kind of connection in that way. And so he was suggesting that then our task is to find ways to make reading a more social activity, in that, having conversations, having group discussions. The teacher in me says, like, that's one of the wonderful parts about being a teacher and being in the classroom setting with folks who are studying literature, even at a very young age, because we're talking about it together. So I think that's one thing that we can think about, is planting seeds for young people that involve not only reading the books, but with Dr. Sarita's family, of reading the book, and I'm imagining as they pass the book from person to person, there was a conversation. This book was so amazing. I loved how it ended. I couldn't believe how it ended. And that conversation being part of what created some of the engagement with the literature. So I think one thing that maybe we can do with people, especially young people, is when we read the book to the child, say, well, what did you think about what happened? And do you have any friends who you think might also like this book? And what might they say about it? To kind of keep the conversation going so that it feels a little bit more like a community activity, one in which we're learning from each other, and we're recognizing my particular reading of the book might be a little bit different from yours, because the kitchen in which you imagine the story taking place is different from the kitchen that I imagine it taking place. And what is that difference like, and what's maybe exciting about that? I think that would be one thing, is to early on plant the seed that reading, although reading is something we might do together, it is something that we can share in conversation. And maybe another is to find ways in which reading connects to other aspects of our life. So the cartoons that we're watching, or we're baking cakes together. It's holiday time, and we're creating a recipe together. Can we find a book that's about other kids baking, or things like that, so that we can have that conversation there in the kitchen, not just with the book open, but, oh, this reminds me of that book. Wasn't that interesting? I think also, and this is maybe a more difficult task, but I think there is something that we can do in terms of that resistance, because technology is faster and brighter colors and all this blinking, is to try and create a more openness to the quiet away from technology, even if that's just a few minutes a day. It's just sort of a say like, okay, you know what, let's just sit outside. Let's just be away from things for a minute. That kind of helps us develop an affinity towards the quiet and towards that open space. I kind so often with literature, I'm thinking about the words that are printed on the page and the white space where there are no words. And I think sometimes I think that in terms of how we spend our days and spend our time, where, you know, right now we're in a moment of words and what we could say the printed ink, where we're filling our time with these interesting big thoughts. Then after our time together is over, what will we do? Will we choose to spend a few minutes just maybe closing the computer screen and just saying, oh, what did I think about? What did I hear from the other panelists? What did I learn? And letting that kind of soak in, the way that rice soaks up the flavors around it, that white rice can do that. So I like to think about what are the ways that we're creating white space or white rice time in our lives. And I think doing a little bit of that intentionally, even if it's just a few minutes a day, is going to allow us to say, hey, time alone, time in quiet is useful, valuable, and it's not so scary as I might have thought. And that can be space in which books enter, and also thoughts about books enter.
Thank you, Professor. Dr. Sarita, I think that you can come up with this question solutions from Dr. Sobha. She asked you a question: Plato advocate for banishments of poet from ancient Greece. If literature is so important from a social perspective, why do you think he advocates such a thing? So, what's your explanations? Yeah.
When people read, they begin to think. They begin to question the existing norms. They begin to question everything around them, in fact. So even in a few centuries ago, I think in India, women were not allowed to read. Why? Because that would make them more conscious of what's happening around them. That would make them more aware of their own situation, and that would give them a chance to connect with other people and open up about what's happening to them. So I think that must be the reason why uh, uh, dictators, people who do not want other voices to come in, people who just want to dominate, would not want anyone else to read, I think. Yes, because reading enhances your thoughts, enhances your mind in so many different ways. And then comes the time when you start questioning. So why would a person who wants to dominate other people and rule over them want literature to be around? I think that's what I think, why they wouldn't want literature to be around.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you. I want to take another question from audience. Shumanta Sharma. Question is: literature open up a world of inspirations and creativity. Does it also develop skills that are essential for today's global environment? So I ask these questions to discuss both Professor Shirley and Professor Brett. Okay, I want to start with, yes, Professor Shirley. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that wonderful question. I think that there's so much richness and depth and opportunity and adventure that comes from reading, from literature, from poetry. And I think that we mustn't lose sight of the comments that Dr. Sarita just made now about how it is, that reading leads to thinking, and thinking leads to questioning and analysis and making sense of things. And it allows you to have a point of view on various things. And sometimes our societies are set up in such a way that they don't want us to have that amount of critical thinking. But I think to the skills question, I think in business, reading has a critical role to play in helping us to think through what the complexities are in this uncertain world, to what are the leadership challenges? How do we ensure that we are skilling our young people to be able to be successful in the world of work as it is today, or be successful entrepreneurs, and that they're able to excel and continue to learn. And one of the things about learning for me really is around not what you are covering, but what you are discovering while you are, are learning, and while you are. So what new have you found out? Have you figured out something that you can share with us? And I think that particularly in a country like South Africa, where we have huge skills gaps, where we have people who actually do go to university but are not equipped to come back and do what they need in the workplace. I think the opportunity for me really was not so much the technical skilling, but learning to learn. You having the ability to continue to learn, and to know that I have to learn, and to remain teachable even when you have the PhD. A lot of us think, oh, we can just go and Google something if we need to know something, but it's not so much about that. And how do you translate knowledge into intelligence, into something that is going to be enriching and helpful in terms of on the way forward, and creative and compassionate, and all of the important things that we need to fix the world today. And so the skills development element of education, and the vocational training, if you like, and the on-the-job training, and the whole point of how I got into this. I mean, I started off as an English teacher, and then I went into teacher education. I was there for quite some time in teacher education, and it was really about teaching teachers how to be better teachers, and how to support and enable teaching and learning, and design curriculum, and methodologies of teaching, and all of these wonderful things, and philosophy of teaching. What are you teaching, and why you're teaching it, and how you're teaching it, and the modalities of teaching as we now have it. I mean, we've just drifted into this online learning scenario because of COVID. It was amazing how teachers had to kind of flick from classroom learning to where they are now. But the point that I'm trying to make is that learning to learn really is the most important skill, because once you've understood how to do that, then you can literally be in any industry, or you can use your existing qualifications and use that as a foundation to get the building blocks to work for you. And so skills development is a big thing, because I then went from teaching English to teacher education. And then when I came back from Harvard, I was thrilled to have this, this doctorate, and coming from Harvard back to South Africa. And I wanted to work in the education department and I went for a couple of interviews, and I didn't land a job in education. It was quite diabolical. But the problem was that the one door closed and a new door opened that I hadn't actually anticipated. And I read an ad for a corporate who was looking for a training manager, and I said, "Oh, I can teach, I can present, I can design, I can, look for content, I can." And I was like, just learning in the workplace and teaching in the workplace. So I could take all of that I had over all the years and make it happen there. So workplaces in South Africa have become important places of learning as well, for producing the kind of skills that companies are going to need for now and into the future. And the future world of work evolving means that we're all going to have to stay on top of our game. And so continuous learning and skills development, but education, which is more fundamental, I think, because education is not just about knowledge and content. It is about how we behave. It is about our values. It's about how we shape and influence the world. And I think that those are the important things that we need to take from literature from an early age. And I do agree. And this is also another problem here, is that we don't have formal early childhood development, and we have huge challenges around when children get to school. They haven't been read to. They haven't. They've been exposed to all of these things, and then we're expecting them, somehow to come out 12 years later with and ability to go and navigate, college and all of that. And I think that we need to take to heart seriously what is being said here today. I think as I listen, that planting the seeds from a very early age, as happened in my case, was important. Not just to build the skills that South Africa needs to be, competitive in the world, but to start very early with how education, and I think it was Nelson Mandela that said, education is the most powerful weapon with which to change lives, to change the world. And I think that we need to listen and reflect on what that actually means as we navigate our way through these kinds of these conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Brett. What do you want to give the explanation on these thoughts, and if you have different perspective about these literatures and development?
Would you mind to repeat the question? You actually kind of cut out a few minutes ago when you were sharing the
literature open up a world of inspirations and creativity. Does it also develop skills that are essential for today's global environment?
Mm-hmm. Maybe just to follow up on some of what Professor Shirley has said is I think one of the great aspects of literature and practicing literature either as a reader or writer is that it trains us in creative thinking. It teaches us to processes and habits of creativity. I think that sometimes people like to ask, well, do writers wait for inspiration? And do they don't write anything until some amazing idea hits them? And sometimes people ask me that, or my students will ask that, and I say, no, absolutely not. That we keep writing. Excuse me. We keep writing. We keep going. We make writing as like a form of exercise. So we get up in the morning, we write our poems, our lines, even if we don't really feel like it, even if we're not really inspired by it. And so we're training ourselves in this habit of creativity. Ross Gay is a poet who recently wrote a book called The Book of Delights. And I saw him actually on an interview yesterday talking about it. And he said he gave himself this project that every day he would write about one thing that delighted him. He would write a short, cohesive essay about one thing that delighted him in the world. And he's a poet who's written poems before this. He wrote poems about how exciting it was to button one's shirt or to drink water from your hands, and just sleeping, falling asleep, wearing your clothes, and all these wonderful little delights of the world. He said, I'm going to write a book about 365 of these. I'm going to practice this, and then eventually it'll become a book. And one of the challenges when he took on this task, he thought, I hope that I can find something every day to delight me. And the wonderful surprise for him was, in fact, more things began to delight him. So he didn't run out of things, right? It was that because he was choosing to look for these things every single day, he found more of them than he was finding in his life beforehand. So the process of creativity, the challenge and the habit of entering the creative space in the creative mindset brought about, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? I'm going to be creative. I'm going to think differently. I'm going to challenge myself. And then he, in fact, did do so. And so I think that this is one of the gifts of literature, reading or writing, is that it's forcing us into this creative mindset that in turn can feed us in other ways, including in other ways that we might feel are more ways that relate perhaps more directly to some of the challenges of today. If we have taught ourselves to be creative people who think in these different ways, or think if I look for it, I'll find it, then we can take that mindset with us to these other concerns.
Thank you. Dr. Sarita, my questions to you in a different way. You are very, very involved with research and different kind of write-up and different kind of social works, NGO, many things you have involvement. Actually, everyone in this panelist, everyone has a lot of involvement and other things. So what the inner strategy, how you manage time, how you actually cope up with these situations, and what your advice for youth community, that how they can grow their leadership quality and with the present skill sets and the technology, how they grow themselves and how they can manage their time and do a lot of work.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sharif. I think, first of all, when it comes to time management, we have to prioritize. I Everyone has 24 hours in a day, and we need to divide time depending on the work which is more important for us. So that's what I do. Yes, I try to pack in as much as possible in a day. And there's one thing called multitasking. Of course, I would not suggest it to everyone. If you're not very comfortable with it, don't do it. I see most women doing it. I think Professor Shirley will surely agree with me, because we are multitasking all the time. I do it. And it helps, yes, sometimes. But multitasking has to just be limited to tasks which do not require your 100%. So if it is something which you have to give 100% to, you must not multitask. Okay, it comes with a disclaimer. So yes, I prioritize what I do. And leadership skill is, in order to be a good leader, you have to have empathy. Unless and until you understand people, unless and until you can empathize with what they feel, with what their needs are, with what their aspirations are, you cannot be a good leader. That's what I have always felt. And in this technologically driven world where IQ has been given a lot of importance to, we are always talking about intelligence quotient. I think it's time we start paying more attention to EQ, that is emotional quotient. We need to bring in more people who have the qualities of empathy, who have the qualities of friendliness, who are social enough, not just on social media, but who can have conversations in a group, who can work as a team, people who can add value to anything that they are involved in. So I would suggest the youth of today to be more sincere in whatever they do. Whatever they pick up, they should be sincere. They should be diligent. While picking up, they should focus on areas which interest them, areas which they are passionate about. So if they work in areas which interests them, definitely they would work harder for it. So diligence, sincerity, prioritizing, empathy, all these things will surely usher in a better world for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Shirley, I want to take a questions from audience for you. Araf Mehraz. Actually, today, actually, a lot of audience response. I have to extend these sessions because of audience. Do you have available time? Because I know that everyone is busy, even today, Sunday. So sorry about that. Araf Mehraz's question is that good discussions. Isn't technology harming cultural diversity, or it is a making progress?
Okay. So is technology harming culture? Is that the question?
Isn't technology harming culture diversity, or it's making progress? Like, if technology creating like cultural diversity, or it's like harming cultural diversity, or it makes some progress, like cultural progress? What's your opinion on that particular point?
So thank you very much, Mr. Sharif, for clarifying that. I think that we clearly are into what has been touted as the fourth industrial revolution, a tech-savvy world, a world of artificial intelligence, of robots, of people fearing for their jobs that they might lose because they're going to be displaced by various forms of automation and advanced technology and digitization. And that is one sort of angle on the world that you can take. But I do think that the future is human. And I do think that all of these digitization processes are about enabling us as human beings to do things a little bit more efficiently and effectively. But it's not going to replace us necessarily, because we decide, what we're going to be doing with what they or with what is possible through all of this. And I did a whole talk the other day on why I believe firmly that the future is human, despite the fact that many of us feel we've been overtaken by technology. Now, and we've reflected earlier on about the importance of just going to smell the roses and breathing in the fresh air and closing down the laptop and dismantling your cell phone from your hand in which it's held, for many hours of a day. Some of us even sleep with our cell phones right next to our heads, and untold damage apparently that it does, to you is well documented. But the point here is around our diversity and inclusion. I think technology can enable one to communicate with people all around the world from different cultures. It can help you to be more integrated, to be more connected to people that you might never have connected with. I mean, imagine this call today might not have been possible if we didn't have this technology that we could share from all around the world, and I could be sitting here. We were 4 different countries in one space at the same time, and somebody just popped up there and said something, welcome from Sweden, or
Yes,
it's
yes,
amazing.
Bartola. Yes,
Yeah,
Bartola.
but it's wonderful that it's so instantaneous. It's spontaneous. It's there, and it does influence and shape how we engage with each other. And I think this is a great possibility. But I think also that what this world needs now is more cohesion. There's so much fractured relationships in the world right now around race, around gender, around LGBTQI, around any of those pieces where people, find themselves being discriminated against in some other way. But we want to respect and include, and we want to build cultures of inclusion, and this is what hopefully we will be able to achieve through this technology. But I think ultimately it comes down to human behavior that frames what we finally believe about culture and cultural practices, and how we respect each other for coming from different places and different geopolitical environments, and we can be accepting and inclusive of that, and listen to each other and read each other's works. I think that is enabling and empowering. I think that if technology is going to further divide us and create further fractures, which we can see in social media, some people already suffering from mental wellness issues because they're not getting the likes that they need, or they're not getting the recognition or acknowledgement that they need. It creates a lot of cracks and tensions and pain for people, and I think that we need a world that is more cohesive, more honest, more sincere, as Dr. Sarita was saying, and more kind as well. And I think that we need to respect each other regardless of where we come from, and we can have magical conversations like this about how we can improve our lives and enhance the lives of others through technology and digitization.
Okay. Thank you. I directly want to go to Professor Bread. I think there is another question from Abiyaz Mustain. He said, I love this discussion. Knowing the world at the present time, which is the most helpful technology or book? What your views? Which one is the most important right now, book or technology?
I'm sorry. Would you repeat that? The most
Yes.
important.
His question is that he wants to know, like, which one is most important in present world, book or technology?
Well, if you ask any of us, we probably are a little bit biased, and we'll say the book, for all the reasons that we've just shared of its wonderful opportunities. It's an interesting sort of question and tension that I sometimes feel personally, and I think I shared this in a presentation with Dr. Sharita a few weeks ago. Of we're in this moment where we're seeing what the world needs is vaccination. What the world needs is epidemiologists doing their job and scientists doing all that they can do. And sometimes I wonder, well, is what we have to contribute to the world as writers and readers as necessary? And then often I think to myself, well, I don't know if it's as necessary. I don't know if books are as necessary as technology can keep people alive, right? In the hospital, technology can make our hearts beat, literally. But then, of course, literature can, I guess, make our hearts beat metaphorically, and can give us some of the reasons that we have a passion for living. I don't know if I can say which is more important, or that I can say in all regards a book is as important as technology. But I do know that we don't have to choose, and I do know that I and the other panelists here, our lives of literature. I wasn't blessed with the scientific mind, or the mind that could understand medicine and do some of the important research that needs to happen today for the world's health. I was blessed with a passion for books, and that's something that I think I can give and share with people. And maybe the folks who are speedily working on a vaccine right now don't have time to read, but I think most of us in our lives do have the opportunity and the time to make space for both of these things. Right, in our days, we can choose a little bit of technology and a little bit of literature. So my suggestion is let's make sure that we do make time for that literature. It's very important. I can't say it's more important. I don't know how any of us can decide which of those two things is more important, because they both are important in our lives. But let's remember that literature is important in our lives, even if it doesn't blink and flash and beep the way that technology insists on looking. Let's make sure that we make the choice to look at the literature.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. This is really good discussion. Lot of questions, lot of comments from around the world. Thank you for joining today. I have more questions I want to take from Husne Arafat. Those I think this is for Dr. Sarita and for Professor Shirley. Question is about I like today's subject. How much can the book actually help in the women empowerment? So what do you want to say, Dr. Sharita, about women empowerment, as well as Professor Shirley?
Yes, Mr. Sharif, thank you. As I said earlier, when we read, we start thinking, we start analyzing, and then somewhere our approach towards life changes, and then we start questioning our own situation, or what could be done in order to improve or better the situation that we are. So reading is very important to women empowerment, in the same way that reading is important in order to build a nation, in order to build a young brigade, a young generation of people who is more driven, who is more empathetic, who is kind, understanding, and who can add value to the social stream. So yes, books are extremely reading. Gaining knowledge is very important to women empowerment. So it starts with educating the girl child. It starts with educating, and I think it ends to the point where they can actually start reading for knowledge, not just for a degree or to finish their education, but for knowledge. Yes, I would like to hear Professor Shirley's views on this.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sarita, and thank you, Mr. Sharif, for the questions. I think that literature clearly has a position, pound position, in terms of how we can change the world, where women, who in many societies and in many cultures and many countries around the world have not been empowered, but have been disempowered because they haven't been able to access to good literature, have been denied, the opportunity to read, and have just been pushed to the periphery of society. And there's so much writing through over many decades, maybe even centuries, reflecting on how we can actually build a better world that is more caring, that is more fair, that is more honest, that is more inclusive, and where everybody, whether they be male or female or whatever color you might be, whether we can find a way to build a better world. I mean, surely we want to look back, and we want to be able to say, especially in a year like this, with COVID in 2020, what are we going to be saying when we look back over the next decades, in terms of what we read, what kind of conversations we had, what reflections we had, what philosophies we were embracing, Were we fair? Were we kind? Were we generous? Were we behaving, um, um, equally towards each other as men and women? Were we calling out situations where inequality was so pervasive as it is here that literally every day you have to be calling it out, and documenting it, and recording it, and telling the stories about what happens when you really are inclusive, and when you really respect people for all of what they can bring, and when you're connecting people through dialogues and through papers and through storytelling that might never have been connected, and shifting a mindset that has been shaped in a particular way, that literature can reshape and re-influence the way we or change the way we think about women and women's empowerment and women's place in the economic framework, and women's and the roles that we've pigeonholed women into, and how this has been evolving, and so we can all live integrated and meaningful and purposeful lives. I think literature has a clear role to play, and there are men and women who have not only just been documenting in terms of what the statistics and the analytics have been, but there's so many rich stories of and wonderful adventures and explorations that we can go on, and journeys we can go on, that will say, yes, we can change the world for the better, because right now it's actually not acceptable. So what are those stories that need to be told? Are we actually making sure that we are, as Professor Brad was saying, the book of delights can become the book of how we reshape this whole debate about women's empowerment as well, and integrate that into how we want to change the world, so that our girl children, and in fact our entire society, of men and women, can feel that the humanity is being respected.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to take the last question from audience, Hosne Arafedos. Her questions to Professor Bread. How much virtual education is beneficial for children who are being pulled to develop their inner things? How much they can develop their mindset in the virtual world?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
It seems I'm having a little bit of bad luck, and each time that you ask a question is when my internet seems.
Okay.
So you said how
like she want to know about the benefit of virtual educations, and most important thing is that in the virtual educations, things like a book actually help people to grow from inner thinkings and this kind of thing. Her question is that how much they can develop their mindset in the virtual world. So she is concerned about the virtual education system. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. As in now in this moment of COVID, when so much teaching is online. Yeah, I think that I guess what I can mostly speak up from is I'm a university professor, so maybe others could speak a little more about working with younger folks. But I think that one of my major concerns when in the spring, when we were having to, or in March when we were having to go online for education, was, will there still be that repartee, that community experience? Because that's, as I'm saying, I feel like that's such a big part of our development, and our love for literature is being able to share it with each other. And also, one of my other concerns was that technology can be so distracting, right? That looking at one thing, looking at another thing. Here we are, maybe with this video on Facebook Live, and then that means that on the side there are all these other things that are going on in Facebook, and all these updates that can distract us from even a conversation that we might be having now. And so, but one thing that I've been really, I guess, kind of optimistic about is the ways in which we have been able to connect via Zoom or StreamYard and these types of things, where we're able to have these live engaging conversations together on the technology. And as well as the ways in which we can make the technology actually we can turn what could be a distraction into an opportunity. And so in my case, knowing that my students are going to be online and potentially distracted, I just say, well, let's just sort of choose and create and curate what are some of the things that they're being distracted by. And so it's been this opportunity to say, are you familiar with this podcast, with this video series? Here's a link right now. Actually, this past week, there was a poet whose work they'd done this really wonderful interview on a podcast. And I said, okay, our class is a 3-hour class. We meet live. And I said, let's spend this time actually listening to the podcast together. You can listen to it from my computer, or you can put it on your headphones and you can go for a walk. But the idea was sort of, we've got the distraction, the potential for distraction, but let's see if we can turn it into potential just for enhancement, and to, again, kind of create a habit of saying, the technology can actually feed my education and my learning. And I'm going to, right now, in this moment, take advantage of that. So I guess my thought in terms of virtual education and can the virtual learning be a benefit, the answer is yeah. I think yes, if we're careful and we choose for it to be, while being aware of the challenges. All of my heart and compassion goes to parents these days who are in situations in which the children are learning from home, and the parents are perhaps working from home and working on the needs of the home, and working with the kids and trying to teach the kids maybe subjects that the parents are less familiar with than themselves. And I recognize that there's the good fortune of this moment that the technology and the virtual learning can help with that. And then also I hope that there's the opportunity for parents to also say, okay, now let's take a break from the technology and work on our learning kind of in the quiet. But maybe others have more to say, others who are working or in closer proximity to children who are learning these days would have other thoughts on that.
Yes, thank you. This is actually really nice discussions. Audience come up with the different thoughts. I just take some of their questions. Let's say Araf Mehra said that really it's a nice discussion. I enjoyed it. Thank you, Professor Shirley, Professor Brad, and Dr. Sarita Sharma for your nice discussion. I think reading and writing book is a very nice time in the COVID situations. So thank you, everyone. For the concluding remarks, I request first Dr. Sarita, then Professor Shirley, then Professor Brad. And if you want to share your research papers, research works, and your books, you can share with our audience. Thank you for a very, very nice discussion. Yes, Dr. Sarita.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sharif. As I said earlier, it's always a pleasure to be here on this forum, and especially today, I'm so glad to be part of this discussion with erudite people like Professor Modlin and Professor Shirley. I think we have had a great discussion, and at the end of it, I would like to say that let us encourage more reading habits. We need to encourage reading if we are to usher in a world which is more empathetic, more understanding, and which is any day better than what it is now. So let us encourage, let us plant the seeds right when they are small kids, when our children are young enough to understand the value of reading. And let us make it a habit. Let us cut technology time in families. Like in my family, we have this family time where we are not allowed to touch technology or gadgets, where we're supposed to put our phone down, switch off the TV, and then we just sit together and have discussions. So I think every family can incorporate something like this. Every family can cut down on technology. We cannot do away with technology. It has entered our lives. It must enter. We cannot shy away from it. We have to. Changing times demand different kinds of adjustments to be made. So we have to adjust with technology. It is there to stay in our lives, to make our lives easier. But that should not rule us. I think we should use technology and not let technology use us. So let us get back to those books. Let us dust the cobwebs of our libraries, visit libraries more often. And yes, I'm speaking like a romantic, like an idealist. I don't know, but yes, I would like to bring back those days, and I try my bit. So yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, Professor Shirley, what you want to share from your point of views and concluding remarks for today's session?
Thank you very much, Mr. Sharif. It was a great honor indeed to be on this panel with Dr. Sarita and Prof. Brad, and to have such an engaging conversation with the audience that we actually can't see, but they're having such a great engagement with us. It was just wonderful to be part of this. And I want to say that the topic for today really was changing the world through words, and how literature can heal and change hearts. And there are plenty of healing aspects and lots of change of hearts that are work that needs to be done there. And the only way that we're actually going to be able to do this is changing this world through words, and understanding that words have power, words change minds, change hearts, and words have the ability to really transform our emotions and to help inspire others to create visions for creating, for creativity, for the beautiful change that we need in this world. And for me, everything is about, right now, it's about transformation. It's about lowering the intensity of negative emotions that can take hold of you. It is about positive, taking people to greater heights of what is possible through their potential, through pleasure, the pleasure of reading. And words do change everything. It has a dramatic effect on us. Even the reading and the ability to listen. We spoke earlier on about the relational and the EQ and the social elements of words. But I want to come back and repeat what Dr. Sarita has also said, that reading is absolutely critical to our development. Every single day, wherever we find ourselves, we have to be able to read, we have to be able to understand, we have to be able to make sense of what is being said, we have to analyze it, we have to make decisions. And because this is so pivotal, it's a no-brainer. It must be done. So we must find a way to embed and create and reinforce a culture of reading in our society. Get the books out, get them out early, be the role model. I think that, we for many, many more decades to come, despite the advancements in technology, I think there is nothing more wonderful than sitting with a great book and sitting at the feet of an author and listening to the ideas being put forward, and engaging actively with that through our thoughts and through our reflections. So I want to encourage everybody, if you haven't had the time to read, or you've given up on reading for whatever reason, or you're just too busy, that busyness can be reprioritized, and you can find the time, make deliberate time to read. And I can say to you, your life will be 100-fold more enriched if you took that little bit of time to do this. Thank you very much, Mr. Sharif, for a wonderful discussion.
Thank you. Professor Brad, what do you want to say as a concluding remarks, and what do you want to share with our audience? Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity to be here with everyone. And it's been a real pleasure to hear from Dr. Sarita and Professor Shirley and from the audience, and just to learn and get to think together. I suppose some concluding remarks I would say are, yes, please, everyone read. It would be wonderful if, when you see someone, you call someone on the telephone, you say, how are you doing? Or, what have you been up to? What if one of our standard greetings were to be, what have you been reading lately? Or what have you been learning from books lately? We can make that a little bit more of a cultural norm, to assume that people can benefit and perhaps are benefiting from literature. One small thing, as we've been talking about technology, one thing that I've been finding really useful, just at this very specific moment in COVID, when sometimes I find it difficult to sit down and concentrate because I start to worry about something else, or worry about the state of things, or I'm trying to multitask, as Dr. Sarita spoke of. I've been listening to audiobooks, which are a little different, and they're not as quiet as me, myself, with the page, but they're a way for books to be a part of my walk in the evening. So I go for a walk and try and be quiet and still. My body needs to move, but I can let my mind take in books that way, or while I'm working on some simple household tasks. listening to books has been really valuable to me in a way that I guess I want to. In a way that technology and literature can marry each other is through the ways that technology can present tales to us. But I suppose my sort of parting thought would be Robert Frost, the poet, said, "Poetry is a momentary stay against confusion." And so this would be, in this confusing, very complex time in which we're living, the idea that something could give us a little bit of a pause, a little bit of a moment to think through our questions, and a little bit of that white space is certainly a gift to ourselves. And so I think the person who takes the moment to read, once they've started, they don't need us to continue to try and persuade them, because reading itself will persuade them. They'll see this is this calming moment of relief from the confusion of the world, in this moment to maybe understand the world in a different and perhaps wiser way. So I would say to everyone, let's go forth, let's read today, and then when we're done reading, we can talk to each other, say, what did you read and what did you enjoy?
Thank you. This is actually a really nice discussion. Lot of audience response. I cannot take all of their response and questions, but thank you for a very, very nice sessions. I want to invite you more in the futures. We are planning for more conference, more debate, more policy dialogues. So hopefully you will join with World Talent Economy Forums, and even previously we do a lot of offline activities and conference in Oxford University, in Xiamen University, in International Islamic University. So we will do more activities. So definitely we're going to invite you after this COVID, and definitely hopefully everything will be solved soon. And thank you for your available time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.